Is it legal to live in your van? Yes, providing you have an address. The police and the courts and the DVLA and your insurance company must know that you have an address that you can be contacted at for fines, for court appearances, or just to be able to know the vehicle is registered to somewhere. I use my sister's address. I visit there once, maybe a fortnight, sometimes once a month. So yes, you can live in your vehicle. You might want to look at the small print in your insurance details and whether you're covered for that. But nobody knows if you're on holiday for a week, a month, or whether you're living in your vehicle, your camper van during the week and then going home on the weekends. It could be any of those. So it's not illegal to live in your van, provided you have an address. And that's one of the things that I say. I say that I'm working the week and then I go home the weekends. Should anybody ever ask me, but they don't. Oh, my employer is also happy with my situation. They know my address. I have a DBS. The vehicle is registered to my sister's house. I'm registered to my sister's house. My DBS is registered to my sister's house. And it seems to work swimmingly, no problems. I get my post. That's all you need is an address. That's it. Is it practical? Well, that's whether you wanted to make it work for you. There are compromises, but there's solutions for all of those. You know, for example, can you have a full-time job? Well, yes, anybody can have a full-time job, you know, if they want to. It's whether or not, you know, living in a van life, it can take a little longer. For example, laundry. I or my wife normally spend, you know, half a morning sorting out our laundry, going to a laundrette, parking, making sure we got change, you know, waiting for a dryer maybe. So it can take time just doing the laundry. Also getting water can take time. You have to have these things in mind so you can schedule them into your daily lives. Now, you can either make it work for you with your part-time job, or you can work your way towards being part-time, which gives you a lot more free time to be able to pursue other aspects of your life. So I have other hobbies and interests that I pursue, and I also have a lot of time to relax and enjoy life, because I feel working full-time is just too much. Some things you might not know. Cabin fever, going stir crazy. It is a real thing, even in a van. Alright, you go to work and you can see people and you can go shopping and you get out and you see people, but when you're in a van, obviously you don't really have stairs, so you're not going upstairs to the bathroom and downstairs and to the bedroom and living room, but you're looking at the same four walls day in, day. You may love those four walls, and I love my walls, but looking at them constantly, day in, day out, can drive you crazy. I mean, we now have a routine or a schedule where we make sure we go out. Every weekend we do something, and during the week often we'll go out and do shopping, or we'll just go somewhere else, you know, to get a change of perspective, a change of view. And that's another thing. Sometimes, because I'm working all the time and I'm a lot of the time in the same area, I like to move around a little bit. And then sometimes I'm quite happy to stay still for a few months in the same place. Our previous van was a big Mercedes, and it looked a little bit hippie, you know, with a chimney on the top and that. But my wife wears dresses and skirts, and she looks very feminine. And obviously, we're both very clean. So that's part of it, is to know yourself, that you're clean. All right, the vehicle might look a bit, you know, ropey, but you're clean and you present yourself well, you know. That goes a long way to dismiss people's judgments and beliefs and ideas. Another thing is, depending on where you park. For example, I used to park in an industrial estate when I was working in a place in Exeter, and one of the employers from one of the units come out and said, "Oh, this is my parking for my staff. They all park here." Bearing in mind, there was no double yellows, not even a single yellow. There was no signage. There was nothing to say that he owns that area outside that road. And I thought, well, I got taxed and all that. Now, I'd have been quite happy to stay there and tell him to go stick it up his bum. But my wife is much more sensitive and really doesn't like confrontation at all. So we moved the next day. So that is another thing you can do. You can think about where you park. All right, we didn't know this at the time, but we don't park outside residential areas. We don't park outside people's houses unless we're popping into town and coming and going again. So we're careful where we park. We try and stay out of the way, lay-bys. But most of the time, I live mostly in industrial estates. I know it's not very exciting, but the brilliant thing about the industrial estate is that nobody bats an eyelid. Nobody cares. After 6 o'clock, when everybody's gone home, you know, you might see the odd security guard. It's really quiet. Occasionally in the main road, you might hear a boy racer coming around, but generally it's really good. Yeah, I can't think of anywhere better. All right, it's not pretty, but, you know, I can go off and be pretty on the weekends or the evenings. It doesn't matter. So, yeah, thinking about where you park and how you present yourself. For example, this is a minibus, but I don't have any paint on it or any colours or flowers or anything like that. I personally prefer to keep my wife happy, not have confrontation, by keeping everything low key and very sort of, I don't want to say minimalist, but not shouting to everybody, oh yeah, we're living in our van all the time, come look at us, you know, not drawing attention to myself. So that's one of the main things that my wife and I take to heart. Trouble you get. So we've lived in vans, my wife and I, on and off for the last 3 years. And the last year, constantly, I've lived in this van and she's lived in her van. And over the last 3 years, we've had one trouble in a small town where near an alleyway, a young lady come out about 3 o'clock in the morning, I think it was, obviously from a nightclub down the road, I think it was. And she started kicking the van, but up by the door, up really high. And I poked my head out, you know, I'm just in my jammers or boxers or whatever, and I'm like, what's wrong? What's your problem? And she was spouting out a load of junk about, oh, you're scrounging off the benefits and you shouldn't be here. And oh dear. And I thought, well, if I wasn't, you know, if I was an unsavoury character, I could have pulled her in the van, but that's another story. Anyway, I jumped in the front, the wife grabbed the side door and shut the door, and we just drove off, and we've not parked there since. But that was only like 10-15 minutes. We parked up somewhere else and went back to bed. And that was about 2 years ago. One other time we were in Spain, and we were parked at a Mirador, just down the side, and we could see there was a house like across to the other side of the stream, and we thought, nobody will notice, it's all right, it's late at night. And at that time we had the van blacked out, and we were enjoying a bit of rest. And so I think it was like Saturday morning at like 10 o'clock. We stayed up late, and we got a bang on the door, and it was like a guardia, like a police, and she didn't speak much English and we didn't speak much Spanish, but basically said you couldn't be here. So we said yeah, okay, and then we packed up and we left within about 10-15 minutes. No rush, no hassle. She wasn't aggressive or mean or horrible, and no fines or no tickets. But yeah, that was no problem at all. So the reality is, nobody really cares. 99.9% of the time you get left alone. Nobody cares, especially if you're being sensitive to the area, especially if you're moving along and you're not having music out. I mean, I've been to a lot of places and car parks, and it upsets me to see that in a lot of places the parking gets taken away from camper vans. The parking gets restricted, and they change it. I mean, for example, Exmouth Beach, there used to be a long, well, there still is a long promenade, but the vans would often park all along the promenade, and especially if you get big vans like, I don't know, a Sprinter, you know, extra long wheelbase, or a Jumbo, and you know, you'd overlap the pavement, and then people would have their doors wide open and sat outside their doors in their deck chairs, and then they'd have a few bikes there and kids running around, and they'd have another van with their friends next to them as well, and it just caused a massive bottleneck for all the pedestrians and cyclists and everybody trying to cut through. So I think that the council got fed up with that, and then people got moved along, and now the parking at Exmouth, the official parking, for overnight is, you know, about 1,000 meters away, quite away from the, well, not a long way from the beach, but you can't see the beach basically, and you're in with all the lorries and stuff like that. So it's nowhere near as nice at all. But it gets spoiled. So, you know, it's about being sensitive and thoughtful about the, you know, your local environment and the people that live there all the time. Really? Well, that's it. Yeah. Part-time works for me. That's how I prefer it. You might not know is, for me, is the elation come payday, when I know that that pay is virtually all mine. All right, I pay car insurance and I pay tax and I pay, you know, for my fuel and I pay my phone bill, but basically my money is my own. I can do what I want with all the rest of my money, which is great. It's just come Friday I feel really happy that money is mine. You know, I haven't got to pay £800-900 on rent and council tax and water rates and electric. Oh, the list goes on and on. I talk about it a lot, and my wife gets annoyed because I say, "Oh, how much we saved on this? How much we saved on council tax?" But yeah, she gets annoyed with it. But I do pay tax. For those that say I'm a tax dodging dole blodger or whatever else. You know, I work and I pay tax. I pay tax on my fuel. I pay tax on my road tax. I pay tax when I go shopping. I pay tax on MOTs. I pay tax on everything that everybody else pays tax on. You know, where I have to. But sometimes I think, you know, if you don't like your phone provider, you can say, well, I don't want to be with you anymore. I'll go with somebody else. If you don't like the garage that fixes your car, you can go somewhere else. With council tax, if you're not happy with what the council do, you can moan about it, you can write a letter, you could even vote. But it's not really going to make a difference, is it? You're not going to change. It's not going to dramatically go, oh, you're living in a small one-bedroom apartment? You know, well, fair enough, don't pay any council tax, that's fine, you know, don't worry about it. I suppose you could argue about the other services, about the police and the ambulance service and the fire service. But again, I pay national insurance tax. You know, I pay a lot of taxes. It's up to the government what they want to funnel down what avenues and call it what they want. But I pay plenty of taxes. My choice not to pay council tax and prefer to live like this, that's my choice. It's a bit like somebody that chooses to have a motorcycle, you know? You choose to have a motorcycle, you can cut down and filter through all the traffic and all the lanes, but when it's raining, you get wet. It's a compromise and a choice that you make. So that's one of the things that, cutting back to it, long story short, that's what makes me happy, is the elation of payday. So, but yeah, I do pay taxes. Oh, and the happiness of having a small footprint. You know, I mean, I've just got my vehicle. It's not a new vehicle. That's it. I mean, I have nothing else. I have everything in my van, and that's it. I don't have a big, a big house that I'm heating when I'm not there. I don't have a big house that sat around empty, doing nothing, just costing me money for decades, you know, 25 years or more. That's just crazy, you know. I feel sometimes it reminds me of like the Aboriginals or the Native American Indians, in that you don't actually own anything. You know, you're here. You could be a custodian of a property for a while, but as soon as you die, generally your family want to sell it. You know, if there's anybody else, they'll sell it. The council will sell it. It's not staying around. It doesn't stay yours forever. You don't own your car. You're just a registered keeper. You don't even own your children. You sign them over when you write a birth certificate. You don't even own them. You don't own yourself. So owning something is I don't know, it's arbitrary. So that's one of the things I really like, is having that small footprint and knowing that when I die, there's not going to be a lot left of me to worry about, not a lot of my possessions to worry about. And having this small van really makes you think about what you really want to buy when you're walking around the pound shop, or when you're buying gifts and that from touristy places. You think, do I really need that magnet or that tea towel? You know, it does help keep the stuff to a minimum, you know. So that's another bonus. Right, well, that's it for today. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are, what your experience have been, and what you think about what I've said. And what would you do differently? What would you tell people differently? So if you've lived in a van for quite a while, what would you tell people? Let me know in the comments. I really want to know. And for now, Nanu Nanu. More calling Orson. Come in, Orson.